Let's summarize. What verb, particularly modal verb, what modal verb do we use when we use for rules and recommendation sentences? It's a must. We use must. Is it a positive? Yeah, not only a positive, but this is for rules and recommendation. What about you give a strong obligation that you should not do? You use mustn't. What about you give an advice? Which modal verb do we use? Should. What about you give an advice that you shouldn't do? Use shouldn't. That's our rules. Got it? We got 4 rules. For a positive rules and strong obligations, we use must. For negative obligations or rules that you are not allowed to do, we use mustn't. 1, 2. A positive and a negative. Next, we are giving an advice. We use the modal verb should. It's not that strong obligation. It's just an advice or recommendation. Therefore, we use should. But if we are using in a negative that we ought not to do, we use shouldn't. Memorize this. Memorize this. If you master the purposes of must and should, you get no problem with it. You must understand why we use mustn't and shouldn't in a negative. Negative advice, negative strong obligations. That's our 4 rules. So, let's recall. For number 1, it's a strong obligation. And it's a positive obligation. That's why we use must. Number 2, we use should because it's a positive advice. Therefore, we use should. Number 3, we use mustn't because it's a strong negative obligation. Or simply, it's a negative that we shouldn't have to do. We shouldn't have to do, but it's a strong obligation. Therefore, we use mustn't. And for number 4, we use shouldn't because it's an advice not to. It's an advice not to be noisy in class. It's a negative advice. That's why we use shouldn't. Meaning, you are not to do it. Be noisy in class. Get it? I'll add 2 more. Rules, must, negative, mustn't. Should, positive. For negative, shouldn't. Clear? Do we need to put to and then verb? Do we need to put to and then verb? Example, you must to tell. You must to tell. You must to tell. You should to study. Do we need to use the word to before the verb? No. We don't need to use to because we use the base form of the verb. We will not use the word in infinitive form. To walk, to speak, to dance. We don't need to use the word to. We just use the word, the base form of the verb, tell. Study. Okay? So, to verb, never. Only the base form of the verb. Last. Should we put you must tells? You should change Y to I and add ES. Studies. People mustn't cheat. Do we need to put an S on the verb? No. We will not S on the verb? No. We will not put an S. We will not conjugate the verb to the subject pronoun. Therefore, I must tell the same. We must tell the same. They must, we must the same. She must tell. He must tell. What about third person I? I must tell. All the same. So you don't have to be confused with this. You just have to identify whether it's for rules and recommendations or is it giving an advice, or should I say you just have to identify if it is for rules and strong obligations, or giving an advice and recommendation. And for positive, we use must. Positive rules, for rules and recommendation. And for positive advice, we use should. And for negative advice, we use shouldn't. And for strong obligation and strong rules that you are not allowed to do, we use mustn't. Alright, that's all for today's lesson. I know it's a bit confusing, just a bit, but I know it's simple. And I know you have that idea. But we just have to learn these rules. Simply, must for rules and strong obligations. But for negative sentence, we use mustn't. Should is for advice or recommendation. And for negative advice or recommendation, we use shouldn't. Okay, I know you are very eager to learn more sentences about should, shouldn't, must, and mustn't. Wait for the next video for your exercise number 3. For today's lesson, what lesson are we? Lesson number 3, must and should. You need to copy on your notebook all written on the board because I will check it. After you finished copying, writing on your notebook, you take a photo and you need to send to me direct to my Facebook Messenger's account. But if you have further question or discussion, drop your comment on our virtual classroom account. We can discuss this later. And be ready for your exercise number 3. All right? So again, lesson number 3, write on your notebook. Exercise number 3 will be our next video. That's all for this day. I hope you learned something. And don't forget to learn more while you're at home. This is your teacher, Sir Joey, saying thank you for watching. Hope you had a great day. That's all for today. God bless and goodbye.